Canned foods are super convenient, but what exactly are you giving up for the sake of that convenience? Some of these items get pretty unhealthy, and some of them just plain taste bad. Either way, these are the canned foods you should never, ever buy.
Often called a superfood, beans have almost magical nutritional properties when it comes to tasks like fighting cancer, lowering bad LDL cholesterol, and improving digestive health via WebMD. Beans are low in fat, full of fiber, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, and are a staple in plant-based diets around the world. But that can of baked beans or barbecued beans pretty much negates all of the natural goodness of the humble ingredient. According to Healthline, baked beans are typically composed of navy beans that aren't always baked, and depending on the variety, are canned with tomato sauce, sugar, molasses, salt, and spices. If they're not vegetarian beans, then pork may be in the mix as well. Normally, a can of regular beans is type 2 diabetes friendly because of its low glycemic index, which helps your body balance its levels of blood sugar and insulin. With all of that added sugar, however, it's clear that baked beans do not belong on any diabetic's plate. In England, where the Brits love baked beans and tomato sauce, a 200-gram portion has almost as much sugar as it does fiber, according to BBC Good Food. Meanwhile, US brands have 12 grams of sugar in a half cup, which accounts for 20% of the daily limit in a 2,000-calorie diet. Baked beans are tasty, but the healthier option is to make them from scratch yourself and keep an eye on the sugar. All kinds of meat are canned today, but not all canned meat is of the same quality and taste. Spam is, of course, widely considered to be the king of canned meat, or at least the most recognizable example, and it has only 6 ingredients. But like all canned meats, it's high in calories, fat, and sodium. According to Healthline, you're gambling with your life by consuming any processed meat, which is linked to high blood pressure, heart disease, and bowel and stomach cancer. The absolute worst canned meat you could buy is potted meat, the primary ingredient of which is mechanically separated chicken, the paste made from anything considered edible on a chicken carcass. With 8.06 grams of saturated fat and 2,418 grams of sodium per 100 grams serving, not to mention high levels of sodium nitrite, it's no wonder that canned potted meat is best left on the shelf. In the play and film Steel Magnolias, the character Truvy shares her recipe for cuppa cake.
Cup of flour, a cup of sugar, a cup of fruit cocktail with the juice, so I serve it over ice cream to cut the sweetness.
It's a funny joke, but unfortunately, canned fruit in syrup is a poor choice health-wise. As per healthy canning, canning fruit is more complex than stuffing fruit into a jar and sealing it. The preferred hot pack method retains the fruit's natural juices, while the cheaper and easier raw pack method employs sugar syrup and also compromises the natural taste of the fruit. The FDA has detailed guidelines for canned fruit cocktails, but only for fruit canned in syrup. Canned fruit cocktail in heavy syrup has 150 calories and 37 grams of sugar in a 1-cup serving. Fruit cocktail canned in juice, however, has only 56 calories and 13 grams of sugar. Campbell's iconic red and white can is frequently found in kitchen pantries across the world. As per Men's Journal, canned soup can be a nutritious meal, but you need to read labels before you start congratulating yourself for choosing a healthy option. Canned soup is infamous for its high level of sodium. As recommended by the American Heart Association, sodium should be limited to 2,300 milligrams per day. But Campbell's chicken noodle soup has 1,550 milligrams of sodium in a single portion can. Campbell's and other brands do have low-sodium soups available, which are the better choice when it comes to controlling your sodium intake. Also, be cautious with cream-based soups like New England clam chowder. No doubt you expect chowder to have high-fat cream or milk, but in Progresso's chowder, the primary ingredients are soybean oil and modified food starch, a thickener. These are accompanied by cream and butter, which are way down on the list and account for fewer than 1% of total ingredients.
Canning is a popular preservation method for green beans, but it may not be the best option to extend the shelf life of this snappy seasonal vegetable. Leaving all health benefits aside, their unappetizing color and questionable texture upon canning make them a lackluster choice. The beans are cooked and preserved in brine, which causes them to become incredibly tender, lack shape, and easily break. Also, canning turns that distinctive vibrant green color into a dull grayish hue, dimming its appeal on your dinner plate. Compared to canned green beans, the frozen version is a superior alternative. Frozen green beans also come prepped and cleaned, making them a hassle-free option that's way more versatile than canned beans. You can steam, sauté, or even briefly boil them without fearing that they will turn into a limp and overcooked mush. They make a nice addition to salads or casseroles and retain an attractive green color. Unlike the canned version, frozen beans are not ready to eat. Still, these thin green veggies cook relatively quickly, so you won't spend much time around the stove. Potatoes top the chart as America's most consumed vegetable, and fresh ones are available virtually everywhere. Most of the time, you can choose the specific variety you prefer or need in a recipe. While some perform better baked or fried, others are most suitable for boiling.
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Apart from availability, potatoes are generally quick to clean and prep, which is one reason we like to use them in our home kitchens. Also, if you store them properly, they can spend several weeks in your pantry without losing flavor or quality. All these arguments speak in favor of using fresh potatoes. Canned versions might seem more convenient, but they generally have too much salt, and you never know exactly what type is in the can. As well, canned potatoes often soak too much liquid, which can easily destroy the consistency of your dish. Perhaps the only practical use for boiled canned potatoes is in salads, but again, you need to be sure that the pieces are not over-processed and can hold their shape. In most other cases, fresh potatoes are preferred and will perform better for your purposes. Mushrooms are a staple in many diets, mainly loved for their flavor, texture, and versatility. The health benefits are unquestionable. Mushrooms are low in calories, rich in nutrients, and stand out as the only vegetable that is a good source of vitamin D if cultivated in a favorable environment. Like all preserved goods, canned mushrooms pack more sodium than their fresh counterparts, but they also retain some benefits and nutrients. However, they cannot compare in texture and flavor to the fresh stuff. The texture always comes off as slightly chewy, and the pieces regularly have a strange, viscous-like quality, which can be a huge turnoff and isn't improved with cooking. Flavor-wise, fresh mushrooms usually have an inherent sweetness and pleasant earthiness, while canning often kills these characteristics with a sharp sour flavor from the brine. Canned mushrooms are really only an acceptable option if you're looking for a unique variety rarely available in stores. In all other cases, a pack of fresh button mushrooms will always be a better, more versatile alternative. Plus, fresh mushrooms don't really take much time to clean and prep, especially if you're using them whole on the grill. Carrots are a beloved vegetable you should not buy canned, primarily due to the widespread accessibility of fresh ones. These root vegetables are a frequent ingredient in home kitchens and have become so essential to our diet that their availability no longer depends on the season. Even the smallest corner stores typically sell carrots for all those impromptu dishes and unexpected situations when you realize you have already used up your stash. As the fresh version is so easy to get, it would be a shame to reach for processed stuff in the can. Not to mention, fresh carrots are affordable and have a long shelf life that can extend for weeks with proper storage. So there is no reason your pantry should ever rely on canned carrots. Canned carrots also have limited use. You can add them to cooked dishes, but any lengthy processing will soften them further, potentially turning them into soft mush. Additionally, they aren't suitable for long braising, roasting, or grilling, and you can't add them to salads and stir-fries that call for fresh vegetables with some bite to them. Peas might not be a favorite vegetable among Americans, based on 2023 results from a YouGov survey. Still, these tiny green legumes are a classic, commonly found on restaurant menus and in home kitchens. Although peas naturally grow nestled inside pods, they are typically sold as only the seed when fresh, frozen, or canned. The canned version might seem like the ideal choice, but in reality, there are better methods for adding a portion of peas to your meals. Peas are boiled before they are canned, as well as preserved in liquid. Consequently, they tend to soak up much of it, which makes them incredibly soft and mushy. If you want to whip up a bowl of British-style mushy peas, perhaps the canned version would not be so bad. For any other dish, you are better off with fresh or frozen peas, as they are far more suitable for steaming, braising, or boiling.
These peas are bursting with country fresh flavor.
Phenomenal peas.
Canned versions also turn a grayish color, unlike the bright green hue of fresh and frozen varieties. Also, don't forget that cans contain salt and possibly other preservatives, which can alter the flavor of this delicate vegetable and ruin their nutritional profile. We often associate spinach with health and strength, but perhaps it would be best to avoid the version that comes packed in a can. Of course, it's way more convenient than using bulky fresh leaves. However, canned spinach is usually heavily processed and pre-cooked with a mushy texture from being kept in brine. Also, the canned version has a rather unappealing dull and grayish-green hue. If you can't bring yourself to get a package of fresh leaves that you don't have room to store or time to eat, skip the canned stuff and go for frozen spinach. In comparison, frozen and canned spinach have similar nutritional profiles, but the frozen version has significantly less sodium and retains more beneficial nutrients. Frozen spinach is blanched before being flash frozen, which maintains its vibrant green color. It is also typically divided into smaller quantities, which makes portioning a breeze. Apart from its unappetizing color, questionable texture, and lost nutrients, canned spinach has limited use in home kitchens and is mostly suitable for dips and casseroles. If you decide to use it, drain all the liquid and be careful about adding salt since the spinach tends to soak up the canning brine.
Aldi attracts lots of shoppers with its low prices, but some items aren't even worth the low cost. Since they're sealed in cans, it's not always easy to tell which canned foods hit the mark and which ones miss. Do all you can to avoid Brookdale pork luncheon meat. This gross stuff is a knockoff of Spam that will make you shudder from the moment you smell it. It smells so bad that you might not even want to taste it. If you do taste it, you'll be perplexed that this Spam imitation somehow tastes even worse than it smells. And then there's the texture. It's rubbery and breaks apart if you try to heat it up in a frying pan like Spam. Real Spam has a lot of flavors a lot of people love, but there's nothing that you'll enjoy about the Brookdale pork luncheon meat. Unless you plan on buying it to feed your worst enemy, there's no reason for this canned junk to end up in your cart. Simply Nature Organic Lentil Soup is organic and free of artificial flavors. It's also free of natural flavors. There's just no flavor at all. On your first spoonful, you'll realize it's
ultimately a flavorless lump of sadness.
If you look at the picture on the can, you might be tempted by all the lentils that are in this soup. And while there are certainly a lot of lentils, they're soggy and somehow get even soggier when you heat it up. If you do for some reason buy a can of Simply Nature Organic Lentil Soup, be ready to add flavoring to it for any hope of making it edible. Adding meat or at least some spices will help with swallowing this stuff, but the mushy texture will remain a turn-off no matter what you do to it. There's simply nothing to like about Casa Mamita Traditional Refried Beans. This Aldi exclusive manages to ruin refried beans, which, truthfully, isn't easy to do. Firstly, it's oddly fibrous and annoyingly chewy. Refried beans shouldn't be difficult to eat, but these get stuck in your teeth and then your throat. Second, the flavor is all wrong. These refried beans have an oily taste that overpowers anything you mix it with. Even salsa is no match for the overpoweringly bad taste. Though the refried beans are high in fiber, high in protein, and low in fat, it just doesn't matter. Aldi could give cans of it away for free and it still wouldn't be worth bringing home. Mandarin oranges sound like a safe bet, but something went horribly wrong with Sweet Harvest Mandarin Oranges in light syrup. These somehow have almost no flavor. The light syrup is a watery substance that is only slightly sweet, and the actual oranges are smaller than you would expect. Even without the sweetness or flavor, this can of disappointment still manages to pack in 8.5 grams of added sugar. If you are going to consume added sugar, make sure you can actually taste it. For some yummy canned fruit from Aldi, go with Sweet Harvest peach slices in heavy syrup. The peaches are amazingly delicious and the syrup is so good that you could drink it by the glass. Brookdale Chili with beans is a failure when it comes to flavor, even though it's loaded with salt. It's possible to get a can of this chili for less than $1 at times, but it's not even worth that. Don't even try to eat it straight out of the can. The meat is rubbery and the beans are hard. And while the chili is slightly spicy, neither the meat nor the beans are flavorful enough to make it enjoyable. You could consider using Aldi's Brookdale Chili with beans as a base for a chili and cheese dip, or add some ground beef to it along with some hot sauce in order to make a chili worth eating. But a better idea is to buy a quality canned chili to begin with, or just go to Wendy's. If you eat a can of this soup, the fact that it is organic won't be able to mask your disappointment, unfortunately. The biggest issue is the chicken, pieces of which are few and far between. Even when you are able to find the chicken pieces, they are so stringy that they're really insubstantial. And the noodles aren't much better. They dissolve instantly in your mouth and are forgettable at best. The slices of organic celery and organic carrots have the opposite problem. Instead of being too soft and too easy to miss, they are too crunchy and distracting. To put it bluntly, Northern Catch pink salmon smells like cat food. While whiskers and mittens may get excited when you open a can of this stuff, you surely won't. The cat food aroma is the first sign that you made a bad selection at Aldi, but it won't be the last. Canned salmon can be really good, and it has an impressive array of health benefits. It can actually be almost as good as fresh salmon, but Northern Catch pink salmon is a thorough disappointment. Beyond the smell, you will find that the can has too much salmon skin and bones in it. To add to the misery, the skin is tough and the bones are too rigid. Usually you can ignore the bones that you find in canned salmon, but these bones are so noticeable that you will need to pick them out one by one before you think about eating it. Do yourself a favor and just throw it away, or give it to your cat, if you think they won't choke on the bones.
If you're a fiend for beans, avoid the canned varieties that add questionable ingredients. Franks and beans, or pork and beans, is a classic dish that combines hot dogs and baked beans. They can be prepared from scratch, or you can buy them canned from the store, although the latter option certainly isn't the healthiest choice. Hot dogs are often made from processed meat, which can contain additives, preservatives, and high levels of sodium. Processed meats have also been linked to an increased risk of certain health problems, including cancer. Both hot dogs and canned baked beans tend to be high in sodium, and consuming too much sodium can lead to high blood pressure, stroke, and heart disease. And like baked beans on their own, Franks and beans contain high levels of sugar and can contain unwanted additives. Whether you eat them as a side, wrapped up in a burrito, or dolloped on nachos, refried beans are a common sight in the culinary world. They're made from cooked and mashed beans, usually of the pinto variety, but sometimes black or kidney beans instead. They're typically fried or sautéed with onions, garlic, and various spices. Refried beans offer many of the same health benefits as regular canned beans, such as being rich in fiber, protein, and essential nutrients. However, they're less healthy than regular canned beans due to the other ingredients. One of the things to be worried about with refried beans is their high sodium content, as just 1 cup can contain up to 64% of the recommended daily value. Traditional recipes often include lard, which is a type of rendered pork fat. Lard is high in saturated fat, which can raise levels of LDL cholesterol and increase the risk of heart disease. While some modern recipes may use vegetable oil instead of lard, you should check the ingredient list before buying so you know what you're working with.
Knowing is half the battle.
Chili beans are, as you might expect, beans that come in a chili sauce. They provide a shortcut for dishes such as burritos, tacos, or naturally enough, bean chili. This makes them a common choice for home cooks who don't have the time to make everything from scratch. This sounds great in theory, but chili beans are unhealthy compared to standard unprocessed canned beans. This is mostly due to the sodium content. Some chili beans can contain around 20% of the daily value of sodium per serving. Added sugars aren't usually a concern here, but you might find some brands with a higher sugar content than you might expect. When possible, it's best to simply make your own chili from scratch. That way, you can control the salt and sugar content. After all, chili beans are still beans under that salty sauce, so they maintain the nutritional benefits you'd expect, such as high protein and fiber.
Healthy snacks or sugar bombs? Shelf-stable staples or local economy killers? Fruit cocktails are iconic and steeped in American culture. In fact, you've probably encountered the snack at least once in your life. But what exactly is it? Believe it or not, the FDA has some strict guidelines about what constitutes a true canned fruit cocktail.
It's true.
It has to contain 30% to 50% diced peaches, 25% to 45% diced pears, 6% to 16% diced pineapple, 6% to 20% whole seedless grapes, and 2% to 6% sweet cherries. Sounds great, right? So what's the problem? Well, 1 cup of canned fruit cocktail contains 44.4 grams of sugar.
Excuse me, what?
Oh yeah. And it gets worse when you realize the American Heart Association recommends a maximum of 36 grams of sugar for men and 25 grams of sugar for women daily. In their natural state, berries are at their best in the summer months, starting from May until the beginning of September. Once their season is over, the price begins to hike up while the quality decreases. Your berries will be smaller, duller, sometimes shriveled, and basically lifeless. These little fruits are full of antioxidants, like anthocyanin, resveratrol, and ellagic acid. According to experts, anthocyanins give these fruits their color and help protect them from the elements. Though the research is still in the preliminary stages, berries and other fruits high in anthocyanins might help reduce the risk of heart disease and contribute to preventing breast cancer. It may seem smart to keep canned berries in your home, but there's one major health-defying ingredient you're going to want to look into first: sugar. The U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council states that a 1-cup serving of fresh blueberries contains 14 grams of natural sugar, while the same serving size of frozen blueberries contains 12 grams. When it comes to canned blueberries, in light syrup no less, a half-cup serving contains 22 grams of sugar. The maraschino cherry has sat upon the tops of sundaes, swam around in cocktails, and been suspended in Jell-O molds. The bright red cherries were first created in the late 1920s. Wealthy Americans brought preserved maraschino cherries over from Europe, and Oregon farmers wanted to compete. The problem with this particular cherry, the Queen Anne, was that it spoiled quickly and basically turned to mush when undergoing preservation methods. So a professor from Oregon State University created the preservation process that's still used today. Oregonian food scientists piggybacked on this recipe and created a process that included bleaching the cherries so that they could be dyed unnaturally bright colors.
What?
Cherries aren't naturally that red. Maraschino cherries do have 1 or 2 legit purposes. For example, they're good on sundaes and a key ingredient in a Shirley Temple. However, keeping multiple jars stashed away for snacking probably isn't the best move. By the time they reach the jar, they're no longer really cherries. You know it's apple season when the leaves on the trees start turning warm reds and oranges and pumpkin spice treats make their annual appearance. The fruit's main harvest season is late August through mid-November, which is when you'll taste it in the way that nature intended. Bright, flavorful, sweet, and crisp. From a shopping perspective, one of the best qualities of apples is that you can purchase them year-round, and they're still pretty affordable. While an apple a day is said to keep the doctor away, canned apples probably aren't as beneficial. In fact, they could even have a negative impact on your overall health. 1 serving of canned apple slices contains 30.6 grams of sugar. The same serving size of fresh apples entails consuming a mere 13 grams of sugar. Because fresh apples are so readily available, there's really no reason to purchase canned apples, unless you're making pie. Even then, homemade pie filling is pretty simple to make and doesn't include the syrup and additives you'll find in the packaged versions. Yet another fruit that should be added to the I Brews Easily list. Pears come in over 3,000 varieties worldwide. All the same, you're probably most familiar with Bartlett, Bosque, and Anjou. These fruits are touted as being packed full of water, fiber, and fructose, making them ideal for individuals with digestive issues. They're definitely considered high in sugar, with 14 grams per cup. Canned pears in their own juice or light syrup contain even more sugar per serving, and those in heavy syrup are even worse. But the biggest reason you should consider abstaining from canned pears is that depending on the brand, whatever's inside likely does not come from the United States. Since 2001, consumers have shown more interest in fresh pears, which has negatively impacted the Washington and Oregon canned pear industry. It doesn't help that the US imports canned pears from China because they're several dollars cheaper than those canned locally.
Are you looking for the best canned pumpkin pie mix at an affordable big box store? What about fruit that you can easily grab off the shelf to have in your cabinet whenever you get a craving? A cold, colorful cocktail is a fun and refreshing drink to have when you're out with friends, but that's not what you'll get with Del Monte fruit cocktail and heavy syrup. Instead, this is a can of mixed fruits like cherries, pineapples, peaches, grapes, and pears, all swimming in heavy syrup. Walmart's website describes it as ideal for a fruit snack, side dish, or fruit salad recipe. This product doesn't contain any preservatives, but Del Monte will have to forgive us as we try to preserve our taste buds. Simply put, there are much better fruit mix options that you can buy or even make yourself. Reviewers have experienced problems like dented cans and an increasing amount of stems in the cans. This fruit cocktail might taste all right, but it's just not worth the hassle. Who doesn't love a hot pot roast? Well, if it's the canned version, we might have a problem. Progresso specializes in canned soups and also sells broths and breadcrumbs. Their light beef pot roast soup contains only 150 calories, as well as half a cup of vegetables, while also being gluten-free. Unfortunately, this beefy soup is mostly just a broth. A 1-star review on Walmart's website writes that it's more like a weak broth with a couple tiny chunks of gristly meat that look like cat food and a few tiny vegetables. Very few. Other reviews back this claim up. noting that this product tries too hard to remain light at the expense of a good soup.
No soup for you!
There are some people who actually claim to be fans of this variety, as it has a 4.1 out of 5-star rating on Walmart's website. That may sound fine at first, but it's actually among the lowest rated canned items in the online catalog. Many customers complain about the lack of steak and note that it has an unpleasant smell. While we love a good steak with baked potatoes, this canned soup definitely doesn't hit the mark for us. During the winter, a hearty beef stew is just what you need to lift your spirits. This warm and filling comfort food is typically packed with beef, carrots, potatoes, and other flavorful ingredients. While homemade stew is great, it can take a while if you slow cook it yourself, so having a tasty canned option is convenient when you can find it. Unfortunately, Dinty Moore beef stew is not one of those tasty options. One can contains 990 milligrams of sodium, which, according to the American Heart Association, is 40% of the total sodium that one person should consume in a day. This also makes for a very salty stew that distracts from the flavor of beef. Not that there's a lot of it to begin with. According to numerous Walmart customer reviews, the recipe for this product has changed, making it less appetizing with much less beef than it used to have. One reviewer even compared it to dog food. So if you can't find any beef stews on store shelves, you better find time to make your own.
Tennessee, get down! We're having a beef boy made!
Chicken and dumplings are a comforting dish that we'd never pass up on the opportunity to indulge in. It's difficult to mess up such a warm and tender meal, so imagine our excitement when we found a can of Sweet Sue chicken and dumplings at Walmart. This bright blue product is labeled as America's favorite, though, alas, we might have to disagree. With a 3.7 out of 5-star rating, this can is generally left untouched in stores. According to the reviews on Walmart's website, some people feel that the broth is watery and lacks seasoning. One customer called it the worst dumpling I ever had. It was more like soup. There are many great comfort foods that come in a can, but this isn't one of them. When something has the words great value in its name, you probably assume that you're getting something great at a great price. There are numerous brands that offer canned chili, so it should come as no surprise that Walmart carries great value chili with beans on its own budget line. You might think that the price is perfectly wonderful, but the same can't be said about the taste. This bean-infused chili is too spicy, and the proportion of beans to beef is inconsistent, with too many beans and not enough beef. While some people enjoy it, many more don't, with one reviewer declaring, "The worst chili I have ever eaten from a can. It was super bland, and the meat looked like it was broken off from a baking sheet of dry ground beef." Bad flavored chili isn't something you should ever settle for, so do yourself a favor and don't buy this can. One of the most well-known canned foods is, of course, canned beans. And you don't have to limit yourself to the baked variety, as there are many styles to choose from. But no matter what kind of beans you're in the mood for, you should definitely avoid Old El Paso Traditional Refried Beans. The contents of this can primarily consist of cooked pinto beans and water with a little spice, chili pepper, salt, and other ingredients. Walmart reviewers have noted a decrease in the quality of these refried beans. Many speculate that a new recipe is being used, which results in watery beans that aren't suitable for consumption. As one reviewer put it, "Tonight I opened a can of Old El Paso Traditional Refried Beans and found them to be very watery. I thought it was a bad can, so I opened 2 more, all resulting in the same runny texture, chemical smell, and taste." Unfortunately for Old El Paso, this is not change that we can believe in. No Thanksgiving meal is complete without some green vegetables, and green beans make a perfect pairing with turkey, stuffing, and all the rest. If you're planning on serving the canned variety, though, steer clear of the great value French-style green beans from Walmart. While this item is certainly cheap at only 50 cents on the store website, even the color of the labeling is off-putting enough that it should immediately send customers running away. There is a lot we can say about this can of greens, including that it makes us feel green ourselves. Its color is paler than fresh products, which is somewhat understandable, but the fact that there's no added salt is also a turnoff, as it translates into a lack of flavor. If you want great green beans, this just ain't it.
Being green is kinda cool.
Split pea soup is typically a comforting dish that's also super healthy for you. Normally made with peas, garlic, and other filling ingredients, it's incredible as either a side or a meal on its own. The addition of bacon would usually make any meal taste 10 times better. But in the case of Progresso's green split pea soup with bacon, that's unfortunately not the case. The color of pea soup is already unappealing to many, and the pale swamp on this can's label doesn't do it any favors. This soup has a higher rating than some other products on this list, with 4.2 out of 5 stars. However, this soup leaves us wanting in the bacon department. If bacon is in the name, then we expect a fair amount of bacon. But this can barely has any meat in it, as it's instead more like a standard split pea soup. Reviews on the Walmart website agree with this sentiment, with one insisting, "The peas were hard and there was hardly any bacon." If you're looking for a normal split pea soup, then this will still be a hit or miss. And if you're a bacon fiend, you'll be especially disappointed.
Bacon? Gotta get that bacon!
Great value pear halves prove that pears aren't always perfect, especially when they come from a can. This Walmart product contains skinned pears that look a little like raw chicken at first glance. The fruit is covered in a heavy syrup, which only adds more sugar to an already sweet fruit. While some people enjoy these pear halves as dessert, other customers claim that the pears are extremely hard and more like an apple. One reviewer even claimed they're about as hard as a rock, while another declared, "At least 2 halves were so hard that I could not cut them. Had to toss them." There are other canned pear offerings at Walmart with much higher ratings, such as sliced pears from Del Monte. If you're looking for a healthy fruit snack, you'd be much better off buying fresh pears. When you were a kid, you may very well have turned your nose up at broccoli whenever it was on your plate. But hopefully, as you grew up, you realized the wonderful culinary opportunities of this vegetable, such as broccoli soup. This hot and creamy concoction is generally served with cheese, making for a deliciously appetizing meal for even the pickiest of eaters. But even if you love broccoli, you might still turn up your nose at Progresso's traditional broccoli cheese soup, and we wouldn't blame you. This canned soup takes everything we disliked about broccoli as kids and offers it in one convenient can. Reviews on the Walmart website are mixed, with many finding it too watered down, with not enough broccoli or cheese. One customer even likens it to a rather unappetizing article of clothing, noting, "Both my wife and I tried a can of this soup. We both agree that there's this overwhelming taste of dirty socks. I tried adding some spices, and it only made it taste like spicy dirty socks." While Progresso does appear multiple times on this list, they still make many delicious soups, so we suggest trying one of those instead. If you have your eyes on Libby's 100% pure canned pumpkin, then you should take a moment to think about the decision you're about to make. While Libby's canned pumpkin is all pumpkin and contains no preservatives, it's far from satisfying in the taste department. With only a 3.9 rating on the Walmart website, it's clear that this canned pumpkin leaves way too much to be desired. 1/8 of the product's ratings are 1-star reviews, which might not sound like a lot at first, but with almost 900 ratings, that means that more than 100 customers were unsatisfied enough about this purchase to do something about it. Complaints include the pumpkin being watered down or gritty, with one reviewer insisting, "The grittiness in the teeth is pretty gross. If you are making something for a holiday dinner, don't use Libby's."
Will that can of meat on your shelf dazzle your dinner guests? Or send them straight to the toilet? From chicken to cheeseburgers, just because you can pretty much anything doesn't mean you should. Whatever you do, don't buy canned whole chicken. It's unlike any other canned meat, especially in terms of its exorbitant cost. As of November 2022, it's over $10 for a can of Sweet Sue chicken at Foodland. And to make matters worse, you won't get very much meat per can anyway. Most of what's actually contained in each can is just broth, not meat. And if you do buy a canned whole chicken, you'll encounter something grotesque inside an oversized, mysterious vessel. Each can contains one entire pre-cooked chicken that's preserved and ready to eat. While this may sound convenient, the smell of a canned whole chicken is something nobody should ever ever have to encounter. Because it's preserved in broth to help prevent it from spoiling, each can smells like expired chicken soup. The visuals are even worse. One Redditor referenced Sweet Sue and declared, "Sue might be sweet, but she makes hideous chicken." We don't even want to repeat some of the images that a canned whole chicken has been compared to by other folks online. Just know that what comes out of the can is no longer really whole. It's more of a slimy mess. You probably don't see too many people buying canned beef these days, though you may be tempted to get some yourself out of nostalgia. But we'd recommend against that. You're much better off sticking to fresh corned beef. For one thing, canned corned beef is a type of processed meat, which has been linked to health risks such as cancer. To make matters worse, it's made with red meat, which can also harm your health. Then when you factor in the preservatives needed to keep this meat in a can long term, things get even worse. Also, it's high in sodium and saturated fat. Not only is canned corned beef not the best for your diet, it also simply doesn't taste or look as good as the real thing. Even if you have a nostalgic craving for corned beef recipes around St. Patrick's Day, you should go out and buy the real fresh thing. We guarantee it will not taste worse than the canned version.
I guarantee it.
Canned Vienna sausages originated in America around the early 1900s. Back then, we didn't know as much as we do now about what was good for us. But now, it's the 21st century, and you don't need to be buying canned Vienna sausages anymore. They're made of a mixture of processed beef, chicken, and pork. The non-canned variety can be flavorful, but the canned version is typically more rubbery in texture. Dog walking company Rover doesn't even recommend feeding canned Vienna sausages to your pooch because of its high levels of fat, sodium, and questionable ingredients. If it's not acceptable for Rover, that's not a good sign. Along with the icky texture and questionable nutritional profile, Vienna sausages are also known for being flavorless. Simply put, there's just no good reason to buy this canned meat. You might be shocked to learn that we don't recommend buying Spam. It's a rather beloved canned protein after all. From Spam musubi to Spam fried rice, the shelf-stable meat is used in plenty of memorable recipes. That may be due to its attractive appearance. It has a lively, pinkish-red color, not unlike real ham. Its texture is firmer than other canned meats, helping it to resemble real protein. Also, many people appreciate Spam's nostalgic flavor. As one Amazon purchaser declared, "Same taste now as back in 1965. Yummy." However, there are better canned meat options available for your tasting pleasure. For one thing, eating Spam isn't going to do your body any favors, as it's high in sodium and fat, and one can contains over 1,000 calories. That's roughly half the recommended calorie intake for a normal adult woman. True, you probably won't eat an entire can per day, but Spam's shelf life is greatly shortened after opening the can, thereby eliminating the purpose of having long-lasting canned meat in the first place. At the same time, Spam has little to offer in terms of nutritional benefits. To make matters even worse, it contains potentially harmful preservatives like sodium nitrate. If you want to try Spam, try ordering it at a restaurant. There just simply isn't enough reason to justify buying an entire can for your home. A canned cheeseburger is one particular preserved meat that you've probably never heard of. If that's indeed the case, then consider yourself lucky. This strange product consists of one entire cheeseburger shoved into a single can. Each can contains all the components of a normal burger. There's a bun, meat, cheese, pickles, ketchup, and mustard. Of course, as this is a canned product, each of those ingredients is paired with salt and additional preservatives needed to keep that cheeseburger alive. This product was designed for backpackers and other extreme campers who need long-lasting, compact food. But if you're just eating at home, there are much better ways to get your nourishment. And buying this item is highly unlikely to satisfy your craving for a cheeseburger, even when you're outdoors. In 2008, The Takeout tested one of these products and recommended that no one else should ever do the same. The tasters noted that the burger meat appeared gray and covered in film. And on Reddit, people who encountered videos of this canned meat had less than positive things to say about its appearance. As one person put it, "It looks like someone else has already eaten it." Luckily, you won't have to try too hard to avoid buying this, as canned cheeseburgers are hard to come by nowadays.
Hamburger.
Pork brains used to be an important ingredient in various southern dishes like brains and eggs. That particular meal provided a way for farmers to make use of all parts of the pig in the tradition of whole animal butchery. The ingredients of canned pork brains are relatively simple. In the Rose Pork Brains brand, for example, each can contains brains, milk, water, salt, and sodium nitrate. That all sounds pretty familiar, except for those brains, of course. If you're not a farmer, there's no need to try this. And even if you are a farmer, it's still not a great idea. And even if you're a culinary daredevil who likes to sample weird things or you've eaten brains before and liked them, we still don't recommend the canned version of this meat. As one reviewer warned on Amazon, bought this on a dare. Be drunk when you attempt to eat it. But even being intoxicated may not be enough to stomach these brains. No matter how badly you want to impress your friends or your internet following, it simply isn't worth it. We shouldn't have to say anything more, but in case you're still somewhat tempted, we'll leave you with the words of this Redditor. It looked like gray scrambled eggs. In this day where we know about prion diseases, why is anyone still eating brains?
Maybe you got some hungry kids to feed, or maybe you're just looking to experience a little bit of childhood nostalgia by way of Chef Boyardee.
We're having ravioli. It's from Chef Boyardee.
Chef Boyardee currently offers around 20 variations and flavors of canned pastas. One of its lowest rated flavors, the beef ravioli variation, only has a 2-star rating on the company website. Target reviewers were a bit more gracious, giving the flavor 3.1 stars. One aspect consumers routinely commented on was the fact that this product is watery and mushy. Many people noted the flavor wasn't always like that, and even claim they once were able to turn the can over with the top off and nothing would come out. Now it simply pours out in a soup-like consistency. Another word that popped up multiple times in the reviews was disgusting. That's not really a description you want to see when looking to buy an item of food, now is it? A reviewer on the Chef Boyardee site even went as far to say, tastes like mushy wet cardboard in some sort of watery tomato-based gruel. Disgusting. Now, if a product is receiving such awful reviews, one might think that it might have some great health benefits to make up for it. Nope. Although the beef ravioli has less fat per can than the jumbo spaghetti and meatballs, it has more carbohydrates and sodium and lower protein and potassium counts. Overall, the beef ravioli provides less nutritional value while tasting bad. Campbell's has 12 variations on SpaghettiOs, but some are just different pasta shapes with the same sauce. As far as flavors go, there are about 4 options to choose from. You'd think with that selection, each one would be able to stand strong on its own. However, it looks like one of the 4, SpaghettiOs Spicy Original, is not so beloved. These SpaghettiOs are basically the original can, with Frank's hot sauce added in. For spice lovers, this may be a great option. There are, however, many negative comments in the reviews about this variation. Consumers on both Amazon and Acme share that the pasta has a chemical or metallic-like taste that makes the product less enjoyable. So much so that it even overrides the spicy flavor of the Frank's hot sauce.
Frank's Red Hot is so good, I put it on everything. Literally, everything.
One Amazon reviewer coined the Spicy Original as being the nastiest stuff on earth. Another reviewer wrote, "The flavor was awful, barely edible. They actually ended up upsetting my stomach afterward, which is not typical for me. I will never buy them again." Nutritionally, the Spicy Original is almost the same as the original, with only a few insignificant differences. With no nutrition or taste appeal, we'd rather stick to the original SpaghettiOs. Out of Annie's canned pasta flavors, the organic cheesy ravioli definitely has the lowest rating, with 1.8 stars on the company website and 3.3 on Target. The reviews cover a spectrum of complaints. When it comes to taste and texture, many people describe the product as mushy and bitter. There are so many bizarre reports of people opening their cans and finding either 0 ravioli or only very few in each can. Annie's has responded to most of the comments, explaining that the product is filled by weight, and it could have been a packaging error. But with numerous reviews commenting on this problem, it begs the question of just how many times a packaging error can happen. Many customers shared health concerns with this product as well, saying there were high levels of phthalates in the cans. Phthalates are a type of chemical that makes plastic more durable. Consumer Reports tested many types of foods for phthalates and found that Annie's organic cheesy ravioli did indeed contain them, hence the uproar in the online reviews.
Sodium. So much sodium. It's seemingly everywhere in the canned soup aisle, no matter how many vegetables are included. Chowder is a stew made with seafood like clams, shrimp, fish, or lobster, and either milk or cream. It originated in the early 18th century in England as a hearty meal that utilized a variety of seafood. But it's not exactly the healthiest option, as the creamy base adds a lot of fat and calories. For example, Progresso's traditional New England clam chowder contains more than 400 calories and nearly 20 grams of fat in an 18.5-ounce can. And its rich and hearty chicken corn chowder has almost 400 calories and 18.5 grams of fat in the same sized can. Compare that to the same brand's traditional Manhattan clam chowder, which has a tomato base and contains only about 225 calories and only 4.5 grams of fat in a 19-ounce can.
Who wants chowder?
Much like chowder, bisques are known for their creaminess, and that can come at a price, as they tend to contain saturated fat. Eating too much saturated or trans fats can lead to high cholesterol levels, and a large accumulation of cholesterol can restrict blood flow in the arteries, potentially causing significant health problems, such as heart disease and strokes. When you compare bisques, it's clear they're not all the same. For example, 1 cup of Whole Foods Market lobster bisque has 20 grams of fat, 13 grams of saturated fat, and a half gram of trans fat. Potatoes offer significant health benefits, as they're a good source of fiber, potassium, calcium, vitamin B6, folate, magnesium, and antioxidants. But when you have potatoes in soup form, you have to keep an eye out for too much salt and too many preservatives. And potato soups often have extra ingredients like bacon or cheese, which can add additional fat and calories. For example, one 15.5-ounce container of Campbell's slow kettle-style baked potato soup with applewood smoked bacon contains 430 calories and 30 grams of fat, including 10 grams of saturated fat, which is half of the daily recommended amount. And with 1,420 milligrams of sodium, you're already at 62% of the daily recommendation. This soup also includes MSG, a preservative that is found in many processed foods. While MSG is generally considered safe, it has been shown to overstimulate the appetite. Mushrooms are low in sodium, rich in vitamin D and vitamin B6, and they may protect the brain from mild cognitive impairment and aid in overall gut health. Despite all that, you might want to think twice about opening a can of cream of mushroom soup. Sadly, this variety is loaded with way too much salt. If you haven't noticed already, that tends to be a common problem among canned soups. For example, Campbell's cream of mushroom has 870 milligrams of sodium per half cup serving, which represents 1/3 of the daily salt allowance recommended by the American Heart Association. So take it easy on your ticker and skip the cream of mushroom.
Food poisoning, serious infections, and deadly cancers. These are just a few of the health risks associated with some of your favorite canned fishes. Seafood in general may not be at the forefront of the American diet, but tuna is an exception. Americans consume 1 billion pounds of canned and pouched tuna annually, no small number and with no small consequences. However, tuna has a risk of mercury exposure, as it breeds in waters which have become contaminated with mercury from events like volcanic eruptions and industrial activity. Alongside absorbing the heavy metal, tuna feeds on smaller fishes contaminated with mercury, and it builds up in their tissues over time. Tuna species at risk of high mercury exposure include albacore, yellowfin, and bigeye, of which albacore is commonly canned. Although the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has allotted safe levels of tuna consumption in adults per day and week based on body weight, the levels of mercury in some tuna exceed these limits. Mercury exposure leads to health issues such as cognitive defects, anxiety, depression, heart disease, and impaired infant development. Populations such as children and pregnant and breastfeeding women are advised by health authorities to not consume tuna and other high mercury fish.
What the deuce are you staring at? It's tuna fish, and nothing else.
Salmon is a fatty fish consumed for its health benefits and favored flavor. Both wild-caught and farmed salmon are a good source of protein, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B12, and many essential minerals. However, canned salmon can be high in sodium, as the salt content helps preserve salmon in canning. A regular flat can of salmon contains around 700 milligrams of sodium, which is nearly 1/3 of the recommended upper limit of sodium intake set by the American Heart Association. Another concern regarding salmon is its risk of possessing polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, and dioxins, particularly the farmed variety, as it's reared in crowded sea cages. Consuming PCBs in excess has been linked to changes in hormonal health and affects bodily systems. This chemical would need to be consumed in high amounts to have adverse effects, however, so it's best to consume salmon in controlled amounts. Another thing to watch out for in Atlantic farmed salmon is its antibiotic content. Farmers add antibiotics to fish feeds alongside other chemicals to give the fish its pink color for grocery store appeal. Consuming such salmon can lead to antibiotic resistance and other adverse health effects. The deliciously sweet and salty flavor of crab is hard not to love, especially when it's a good source of proteins, vitamin B12, and essential minerals.
You gotta love crab.
Its omega-3 fatty acid concentration also contributes to heart health. However, the relatively harmful effects to your health are commonly associated with brown crabs and their meat. Brown crab possesses high levels of cadmium, a toxic heavy metal which can have harmful effects to your health when consumed in excess. A recent study in Toxics acknowledges the presence of cadmium in brown crabs. It is advised to consume brown crab in moderate amounts until risk levels are properly established. Additionally, canned crab can be a source of increased sodium, as a 6.5-ounce can of blue crab contains 704 milligrams. This amount is nearly 1/3 of your sodium intake's recommended upper limit and should be limited to maintain health. If Red Lobster's endless shrimp is how you consume much of the seafood in your diet, you might want to get acquainted with where the prized shrimp comes from. The majority of the shrimp farmed internationally are riddled with antibiotics to speed up growth and prevent the spread of disease. These antibiotics create antibiotic-resistant pathogens in the shrimp, and a 2012 FDA study found shrimp imported from Thailand to possess the bacteria Klebsiella, which is resistant to multiple antibiotics. Consuming this contaminated shrimp in excess can lead to urinary tract infections and pneumonia in consumers. To avoid the harmful health effects associated with antibiotic resistance and the massive carbon footprint of farmed shrimp, it is often advised to opt for wild-caught shrimp. The thin, finger-like length and thickness of anchovies doesn't seem like much, but these are a nutrient-rich food.
No anchovy.
With extra anchovies?
They're a good source of vitamin B3, selenium, and contain 13 grams of protein in a 43-gram canned serving. In this same serving, they also contain 1,650 milligrams of sodium, accounting for over 70% of your recommended sodium intake at the upper level. For such a small serving, it's easy to eat more than a single can, but be mindful of your consumption, as it can increase blood pressure significantly. The high salt content is due to how anchovies are processed, by first gutting and then curing with salt to draw out water and avoid bacterial growth. To reduce the elevated salt intake, it's advisable to wash anchovies before eating. Oyster towers are the pride of any seafood bar, nestled in their hard shells and offering a deliciously bright or earthy flavor when eaten fresh. They're also a good source of essential micronutrients such as vitamin B12, zinc, copper, selenium, and antioxidants. In the case of canned oysters, you'll find them either smoked or in their natural flavor, typically packed in oil or water, with the oil variety being high in fats. However, there are plenty of risks associated with oysters. According to research, raw oysters can cause bacterial infections as they possess a Vibrio bacteria, which concentrates in filter-feeding shellfish. This infection can cause fever, diarrhea, vomiting, and even septicemia, a blood infection which can lead to death in some serious instances. Moreover, oysters are at a risk of contamination from heavy metals like lead, mercury, and cadmium. Whether you eat freshwater or saltwater mussels, these shellfish are an incredibly versatile food, pairing well with pastas and broths and forked out on their own. Despite being a good source of proteins, omega-3 fatty acids, and micronutrients, canned mussels are heavy on salt, so it's important to watch your consumption. Moreover, mussels suffer from the same fate as many other shellfish, a possible risk of contamination. Consuming mussels caught during a red tide causes shellfish poisoning paralysis, a condition that can lead to respiratory paralysis, gastrointestinal distress, and muscle paralysis. Cooking the shellfish doesn't prevent its contamination, and monitoring programs are the only way to track this occurrence. A good marker of a healthy mussel is the state of its shell, so you should never eat mussels at a restaurant with a broken or cracked shell, as they can cause food poisoning. Overall, mussels can be a healthy and safe option if ethically sourced, but tracking their origin becomes difficult when canned, so it's best to eat the ones from reliable brands. If you love seafood or consume it fairly often, you're no stranger to the briny flavor and soft mouthfeel of a fresh clam. The canned versions are no different, packing essential nutrients like vitamin B12, vitamin C, selenium, iron, and zinc. Unlike oysters, clams are mostly consumed cooked, but eating clams raw or undercooked puts you at a risk of bacterial infections from the Vibrio bacteria common in most shellfish. While picking out canned clams, steer clear of clams canned in or from China. In 2022, the FDA warned against these particular clams, as testing revealed toxic levels of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, present in them, which have been linked to health risks such as cancer.
Too many clams.
Bad clam.
Although the particular brands with toxic levels were recalled at the time, the threat of PFAS contamination in seafood is still a concern, so it's important to be conscious of the seafood you purchase and consume. The lure of bluefin tuna isn't lost on most sushi consumers, as it makes up the main seafood meal of an omakase dinner. It's a medley of rich flavors like umami, sweet, sour, and bitter, all in the tender fillets and marinated cuts served mostly raw. The Atlantic bluefin tuna is a variety to wean off of, however, as it poses both environmental and health risks. As early as 2009, when an angler caught a record-breaking bluefin tuna, ocean conservation group Oceana found toxic levels of mercury in the fish. Owing to its size and longevity, bluefin tuna absorbs the neurotoxin methylmercury in its tissues, which increases with time and can affect the health of its consumers. A study by Rutgers on mercury in bluefin tuna from 1998 to 2019 found the Atlantic bluefin that originates from the Mediterranean to be the most toxic. Moreover, since bluefin tuna is consumed raw in most sashimi, it can pose a risk of bacterial infection from bacteria such as Vibrio and histamine, which it possesses naturally. Histamine poisoning occurs even from frozen bluefin tuna if mishandled and can cause headaches and allergic reactions like itching and flushing. Widely regarded as a luxury seafood item on most fine dining menus, abalones are similar in appearance to oysters and mussels, but retail at a higher price point due to their slow and cumbersome growth. Abalones are also a good source of proteins, iodine, selenium, and omega-3 fatty acids. In the canned versions, these are available deshelled from the coasts of China and Chile. Whether you sample abalone during your next fine dining meal or decide to splurge on the canned ones, be aware that the origin of your abalone determines their safety. Chinese abalone farms have been at risk of harboring concerning concentrations of heavy metals like cadmium, mercury, and silver in their waters, with a study published in Aquaculture revealing the abalones farmed here pose a food safety risk. Moreover, there is ongoing research in Tasmania on the risk of abalones harboring paralytic shellfish toxins, which can harm consumer health. Until safe levels are determined, it's better to avoid abalones from these areas. As one of the most delicious shellfish, scallops pair well with salads, citrusy dressings, in pastas, and seared lightly or pan-fried with a simple vinaigrette. They're also very nutritious, bearing plenty of proteins, omega-3 fatty acids, and minerals like zinc, selenium, and copper. Although scallops are mostly served cooked, you'll find the canned varieties raw, in which case it's important to cook them thoroughly before eating. According to the Oregon Health Authority, raw shellfish can contain the Vibrio bacteria, and eating scallops raw puts you at a risk of bacterial infections. The FDA recommends cooking scallops until they turn milky white or opaque in appearance, and firm for around 3 to 4 minutes. If you want to sample the raw kind, only try them at a specialty seafood restaurant or the ones bought fresh and dry and not harvested in contaminated waters. Another reason to watch out for scallops is their possible risk of heavy metal contamination from metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, and arsenic. Although this contamination is location specific, studies show higher concentration for metals like cadmium as opposed to others. With little conclusive research available, there aren't any safe levels for scallop consumption yet, so ideally stick to the FDA's recommended shellfish intake amounts. There's nothing like a buttery lobster roll or a decadent lobster thermidor to transform even the most staunch non-seafood lover into a die-hard fan.
Oh, lobster, 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 you are delicious.
Oh, God, I love butter sauce.
However loved this crustacean may be, it's not without its risks, and the way you prepare lobster, how you store it, and where you source it from can determine its effects on your health. Lobsters pack 70% of your recommended daily cholesterol levels. Although current research doesn't consider cholesterol as risky to heart health as previously assumed, it's still important to watch your intake, since studies show elevated levels can negatively affect a percentage of the population. Moreover, canned lobsters can contain elevated levels of saturated fats and sodium, with a 4-ounce can of lobster tails packing 480 milligrams of sodium. Similar to shellfish, crustaceans like lobster should not be consumed raw or undercooked due to the risk of various bacterial infections. Finally, lobsters are potentially low-risk seafood classified by the FDA for toxic levels of heavy metal contamination. At-risk groups like pregnant and breastfeeding women and children, however, should consume infrequently and in smaller intakes. Soup, fruit, veggies, and even whole chickens. These foods might sound healthy, right? Be warned, everything changes once you stick them in a can. Similar to fruit, vegetables can also lose some of their nutrients during the canning process. This is especially true for water-soluble vitamins like vitamin B and C. When vegetables are packed in brine, they can also lose their phenolic compounds, which give them their flavor, color, and some of their nutrients. Brine can have a high sodium content too, as it is made with water and salt. The CDC warns that consuming too much sodium increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. Bottom line, it's definitely wise to check the label and look for the canned vegetables with the lowest possible sodium content. Sausages are, by definition, processed meats. They've been transformed through processes such as salting, curing, or smoking to improve preservation or improve their flavor. Processed meats have a link to an increased risk of cancer and diabetes. These health issues can be caused by the presence of chemicals called nitrates and nitrites, which can be converted into carcinogens once absorbed by our bodies. With canned sausages, you've also got the two usual culprits to deal with: sodium and saturated fats. An increased intake of saturated fats can affect your cholesterol levels, putting you at a higher risk of heart disease. When hot dogs or cocktail sausages are on the menu, it's better to choose fresh sausages made with few ingredients, or even poultry sausages. In Mexico and other Latin American countries, tamales have been a beloved specialty consumed since pre-Hispanic times. These small, steamed cakes are made with corn-based dough and can contain dozens of different fillings, including meat, fish, cheese, vegetables, and even fruit and raisins. Seasonings also vary from region to region, as do wrappings, which can include corn husks and banana leaves. However, their canned counterparts fail to tell such a rich story, and they lack seasoning and texture. Hormel tamales, for example, come individually wrapped in wax paper and are canned in a mild, watery sauce. At 8 grams of fat and 990 milligrams of sodium per serving, they're not exactly going to hit your nutrition goals either. Canned fruit with more sugar than a donut? Tuna with enough mercury to worry your doctor? We haven't even mentioned the product recalls on these unsavory canned secrets. Refried beans are creamy, delicious, and they're also a good source of nutrients like zinc, iron, and magnesium. Plus, they taste great on tacos, nachos, and in 7-layer dips. However, buying 8 pounds of Rosarita refried beans at Costco probably won't bode well for your health. While refried beans should be fine in moderation, you probably shouldn't eat them on a regular basis, which you're more likely to do if you buy them in bulk. A single serving from a can of Rosarita contains 580 milligrams of sodium, which is 25% of the recommended daily intake. A better idea is to make your own refried beans so that you can control the sodium level. There's a lot you can do with canned peaches. You can toss them in a smoothie, blend them into barbecue sauce, add them over ice cream, or even make your own peach-infused cocktail. That said, canned peaches often come swimming in a pool of heavy syrup, making them outrageously high in sugar content. Just one full 15-ounce can of Del Monte sliced peaches in light syrup has over 45 grams of sugar, almost twice the amount you should consume in a day, according to the American Heart Association. That's more sugar than a single glazed donut, which only has 15 grams. Costco sells 106-ounce cans of Del Monte sliced peaches in light syrup, and unless you're baking cobbler for the entire neighborhood, there's very little reason you should be buying this. If you're in the mood for peaches, you're much better off just buying some fresh ones for the sake of your health. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, corn is grown in most states on more than 90 million acres of land and processed into just about everything we consume. It's fed to the livestock that we eat, baked into cereal flakes, made into flour, turned into syrups. There is truly no escaping corn.
This corn is raw.
I know, isn't it wonderful?
And that's unfortunate because, as it turns out, corn really isn't all that great for us, especially when consumed in excess. While rich in some vitamins and minerals, it's also very starchy and can spike blood sugar levels. So the next time you're in a Costco and you see stacks of Del Monte canned corn, just pass them by. There's a good chance you're already consuming massive amounts of corn in other processed foods already. If those aren't enough reasons to lay off the corn, consider this. Del Monte has recalled their canned corn in the past from 25 states and 12 other countries due to toxins. There's no denying that nacho cheese sauce is silky smooth and delicious. One widely distributed brand of this particular treat is Que Bueno, which is available at Costco in cans that weigh 106 ounces. But before you buy some and invite half the block over for a taco party, consider that a single serving of Que Bueno nacho cheese contains over 20% of your daily sodium. And then ask yourself how likely you are to polish off nearly 7 pounds of nacho cheese before it expires. Sky-high sodium and problematic leftovers aside, you should also consider the flavor factor. Making this stuff from scratch is easy and creates an exponentially more delicious sauce. So don't let the magnetic pull of Costco's bulk items suck you in. Instead, just make a reasonable amount yourself. Your taste buds and your circulatory system will thank you. Chili is the perfect weekday dinner. Pair it with a simple bowl of rice, eat it with some tortilla chips, or even mix it into some mac and cheese, and you have a solid, hearty meal. So when you're shopping at Costco and you notice the Nally 12-pack of canned chili, you might think about picking some up to save yourself some time. Alas, in this case, saving yourself time also means pumping your body full of salt. Pretty much all canned chili is super salty, and Nally really takes it to another level.
These go to 11.
Consuming one single 15-ounce can of Nally Original Chili will put you at nearly 100% of your recommended sodium intake for the entire day. If you're in the mood for chili, avoid Nally and make it fresh instead. With just a few ingredients and a little time, you can have a fresh pot that's even tastier than the canned stuff and way less salty. Eating tuna offers a range of benefits, but there are also downsides that you should consider. There are two main types of canned tuna fish: albacore, which is made from a larger species, and chunk light, which is mostly made from a smaller species of tuna called skipjack. Albacore reportedly has nearly 3 times the amount of mercury as chunk light. It's so high in mercury, in fact, that most adults should only eat a serving of it once every 10 to 14 days. Costco carries solid white albacore tuna from Chicken of the Sea, one of the most widely canned tuna fish brands, and no surprise, it's only available in bulk. Having more albacore tuna around the house means that you'll probably be eating it on a regular basis. But now that you know that it's high in mercury, you'll surely want to avoid buying it in bulk. The Swanson chicken broth at Costco comes in 12 packs of 14.5-ounce cans, which is an excessive amount even for people who cook at home on a regular basis. Just like most things you buy at Costco, it's important to really ask yourself if having that much of this item is really necessary, and to also consider how it will affect your overall health. Canned chicken broth tends to be extremely salty. The good news is that the version at Costco is the natural goodness variety, which has 33% less sodium than the standard Swanson can. But you can do even better than that. Kirkland's signature organic chicken stock is higher quality and is a healthier choice when it comes to both sodium and calories. It's a bit pricier per ounce than Swanson, but we still think it's well worth the upgrade. The nutritional difference between canned and fresh foods is on full display when it comes to Del Monte cut green beans, which are sold at Costco in 12 packs of 14.5-ounce cans. While the fiber, calcium, and protein levels between fresh and canned green beans are about the same, there are some huge disparities in vitamin content. Fresh green beans offer 20% of your daily value of vitamin C, while the canned variety offer only a measly 4.5%. Similarly, with vitamin A, fresh green beans boast 14% of your daily value, while canned only provide half that. So instead of buying them canned in bulk from Costco, try opting for fresh green beans instead if they're available. Sweet and tangy, the pineapple is one of the most delicious fruits that Mother Nature has blessed us with, so it makes sense to can it. Trimming off that harsh outer skin and cutting up a fresh pineapple can feel like a time-consuming undertaking, so canned pineapple removes all that fuss. One of the most well-known canned pineapple brands is Dole, which is sold in giant 108-ounce cans or in bulk packs of 6 20-ounce cans at Costco. But unless you're making the world's biggest pineapple upside-down cake, it's hard to imagine why you need that much.
That's too much, man!
And there's another problem, as canned pineapple contains a lot of sugar. One serving of Dole pineapple chunks contains 15 grams of sugar, nearly all that you should have for an entire day. And like other canned foods, the squishy texture of canned pineapple leaves much to be desired. So buy fresh instead for a much healthier option. Sausage may be delicious when it's freshly made, but it's not terribly great for your health, and highly processed versions tend to be even worse. The trouble only grows when it's waterlogged and sealed inside of a can, as is the case with Libby's Vienna sausage, which is sold in bulk packs of 18 cans at Costco. If you're going to get some mini sausages, why not just buy cocktail weenies in the refrigerated section, which are guaranteed to taste better? It's hard to imagine why Libby's Vienna sausages even exist, as the taste and nutrition are both absolutely dreadful. They're also incredibly high in salt, saturated fat, and cholesterol. In fact, one single 4.6-ounce can contains 95 milligrams of cholesterol, which equates to nearly a third of the amount you should consume in an entire day. Here's the bottom line. A big part of what makes Costco so appealing is knowing that you can easily buy these items in bulk for a great value. But that doesn't mean much when your health is going to be affected so negatively. According to the National Coffee Association, 66% of Americans consume coffee every day. That makes it the most popular beverage in the country, even beating out tap water. It's no wonder that Costco sells its Kirkland signature Colombian ground coffee in mammoth 3-pound cans. But unless you enjoy the taste of stale Java, you should leave this on the warehouse shelf. The problem with buying ground coffee in such a large container is that it's going to lose its freshness before you can finish it. According to publicgoods.com, an unopened, airtight package of ground coffee can last 3 to 5 months. If you put it in the freezer, it can keep up to 2 years. But when ground coffee comes in contact with oxygen, it begins to break down and lose its flavor and aromatic qualities. This means that once you open that 3-pound can of Costco coffee, you only have a limited amount of time before you're drinking a subpar cup of joe. It's recommended to consume ground coffee within 2 weeks of opening the package. And if you're anything like the average coffee consumer, you're not getting through 3 pounds of the stuff in just 2 weeks. So chances are pretty high that the final third of that Kirkland coffee will end up stale, flavorless, and simply not worth the money.
Rotten canned corn probably isn't at the top of your grocery list, but could it wind up in your cart? If you're shopping at Sam's Club, you might want to rethink these staples. At 4.2 stars, the Members Mark solid white albacore tuna and water doesn't seem like such a bad deal. However, the product has complaints of unwanted ingredients, while others say there is too much to eat at one time. Sam's Club is a bulk buy warehouse, but tuna is one of the things that you'll want to use immediately after opening the can, and more than 66 ounces is a lot of tuna. An additional complaint focuses on the shipping and notes that the cans were dented. This seems to be a consistent problem that shows up with most of the Members Mark tinned foods, but for something like canned tuna, a dent would be especially bad. Not only would the product leak, but the tuna odor would escape the can as well. You might consider purchasing this in person to ensure you get a can that isn't dinged. If you really want to be annoyed at people who rate products, Members Mark Mandarin Oranges is the product for you. These Mandarin Oranges, sold in a large 105-ounce can, are rated at 4.5 stars with numerous 1, 2, and 3-star ratings, and absolutely no reviews for any of them as of September 2022. Listen, if you're going to leave a negative rating on a product's webpage, please have the courtesy to say why you're giving the product a lower rating. Be a good customer.
Look at this! Got a little VIP lounge for me.
Guys, he's doing it again.
You smell that? That's VIP air.
Members Mark Mandarin Oranges are also sold in a 10-pack of 15-ounce cans, and these, thankfully, have some reviews along with the lower ratings. Complaints include too much juice and not enough fruit, objections that the fruit was bitter tasting, claims that there was a lot of peel, and one comment about how the oranges were a lower grade fruit. That's not exactly promising. The majority of Members Mark canned goods that are currently available are tomato products. The complaints vary greatly and often appear to be due to personal taste, at least when you can spot an actual review. For Members Mark whole peeled tomatoes and tomato juice in the 102-ounce can, there really aren't many reviews or ratings to start with. The product still gets 4.5 stars overall, and there are only a handful of reviews for the 1, 2, and 3-star ratings. Still, the complaints are food for thought, with some saying that the product is too watery, has too much sodium, and is never available. Excess sodium can be a problem in canned goods, and normally you should always rinse canned vegetables and beans, which would remove things like sodium from the surface of the canned food in question. This, unfortunately, doesn't work that well for peeled tomatoes and juice. Members Mark diced tomatoes and juice comes in a 102-ounce can, with numerous ratings of 1, 2, and 3 stars. The biggest complaint is that the product is too watery. Luckily, the soupiness is easily overcome by just draining the juice from the can. Diced tomatoes themselves tend to remain with better texture in the can because of a firming agent that's added to the food. There's also a problem that just comes with canned tomatoes no matter the brand. Canned diced tomatoes are cooked, so their texture will be different from fresh tomatoes no matter what you do. Despite its 4.5-star rating, the Members Mark cut green beans, available as a 12-count pack of 14.5-ounce cans, has some troubling reviews.
We've eaten from these tins of mystery for years now, haven't we?
Many of the reviews complain that the beans are excessively stringy and mostly stems. The texture of the beans are described as overly fibrous, and not at all what you might expect. In all, about 8 reviews have qualms about stringiness in one form or another, so you may want to be prepared for that if you buy this product. It's not exactly known why green beans turn out so stringy. According to Gardening Know-How, excessive stringiness is a sign that beans were picked too late. However, according to Oregon Live, that justification hasn't been confirmed as the real reason why some green beans end up so wiry. At 4.5 stars overall, Members Mark tomato sauce in the 106-ounce can is one of the lower-rated Members Mark products, but 4.5 out of 5 stars is still pretty darn good. However, many of the negative reviews mention dented cans. How much of a deal-breaker is that? According to the University of Wyoming Extension, minor dents aren't a big deal, but extensive damage means it's safer to just get rid of the can. Other complaints call the product too salty or too watery, and say that it seems like the product has been switched, meaning that the name was the same, but the product inside has changed. The canned tomato adventure continues with another version of Members Mark tomato sauce. The 12-pack of 15-ounce cans get 4.6 stars, but customers have also claimed the product is too sweet and unsuitable for sauce. Another review calls the sauce too bland, while others complain about an awful smell, severe discoloration, rusted cans, and an abundance of the negative reviews mention most or all of the cans being dented. While there were many positive reviews, this one might warrant some careful consideration. Sam's Club carries canned chicken in a 50-ounce size, and the good news is that it's one of the most convenient and nutritious foods you could hope to find wrapped in metal. There are a lot of reasons why you should always have canned chicken in your pantry. However, this particular product puts even those into question. Overall, the product has 4.6 stars, but the more negative reviews include criticisms about a possibly spoiled batch where the meat had an oily texture and off-putting odor, as well as many complaints about dented cans. Some reviewers didn't want such a big can, having to throw away the remainder of the product. product. If you decide to buy this product and find yourself swimming in chicken, you can freeze the portions you can't eat quickly. Still Tasty puts the shelf life of frozen, canned chicken at 1 to 2 months, but also says that this describes quality only. If the freezer is working properly and the chicken is kept at 0 Fahrenheit or below, the USDA says meat should remain safe to eat past that brief time span. In the same realm of canned chicken, 6 count of 12.5-ounce cans of Members Mark Premium Chunk Chicken Breast gets 4.6 stars, and actually a lot of compliments for the chicken itself. People like the product, but recent reviews show many complaints about how much the price has gone up, with one person even stating they're buying rotisserie chickens from now on. Maybe you should go for a freshly roasted chicken yourself, especially considering how many options there are for picking up a delicious rotisserie chicken. Members Mark Pineapple Tidbits in the 107-ounce can get generally good ratings with 4.7 stars. Still, it has a handful of 1- and 3-star ratings with no reviews, leaving potential consumers guessing why former shoppers didn't like the product. It doesn't get much better when you look at the higher ratings also having no reviews. Add in the fact that there are plenty of other options for pineapple, and it's safe to say that this one should be a no-go. Another option for canned tropical fruits is the 107-ounce can of Members Mark Tropical Fruit Salad. This has a few ratings of 1, 2, and 3 stars, and only 2 of those have accompanying reviews. One reports a chemical-like taste, and the other thought the fruit was too hard to eat on its own, but might work when blended for a smoothie. And again, the higher ratings don't have much written about them either. That said, this is another product where you may not have much to go on, save for the general sort of idea that this isn't the same kind of tropical fruit salad you might make at home. Tomatoes make another appearance here, this time as the Members Mark crushed tomatoes and tomato puree. This 105-ounce can gets 4.8 stars overall, but the content of the negative reviews is worth some consideration. They all complain about texture. One called the product bland and watery, so much so that it just didn't work in the recipe. Another negative review gives a little history of the product. The customer wrote that they used to buy another brand that Members Mark replaced, and that since then, the texture has been off. The customer review points out that the product was more like chunks of tomato instead of the crushed pureed mixture that most brands use. Another customer agrees, also noting the appearance of tomato skins in the mixture. There's a genuine difference between crushed tomatoes and diced tomatoes, so if you need that distinction to be clear, skip this can. And it's also worth mentioning that this product seems to suffer from the same problem that many Sam's Club cans get called out for: crushed and dented cans. The 12-pack of 6-ounce cans of Members Mark tomato paste has some odd reviews. The product itself has 4.8 stars, so this is one canned tomato product that isn't doing too badly, or so it seems. One review claims the labels on the cans were printed upside down, which led to the customer initially trying to use a can opener on the bottom of the can, and another declares the tins had no label at all. A further reviewer says the best by date had no year, just a month and day. Assuming the date was not using a calendar code that the customer couldn't interpret, we can imagine it would be a bit distressing to find that there is no way to tell when a product's quality will start to decline. Best by dates may be guidelines according to the USDA, but that doesn't mean you want to take chances that the quality of a product you just bought actually started declining last year. If you buy this product, ensure the labels are on correctly and look for a fully printed best by date. If that's missing, that's just not a good sign.
You're eating 8-year-old tomatoes.
They're still good for another week.
You know, I think I might have some type of cheese in the back of my fridge you might like.
Corn on the cob is delicious but difficult. Canned corn is a marvel. You can snack on it, cook with it, and even use the water it's packed in for soup. You can even upgrade your canned corn by dressing it up with spices and sauce for a salad you'll love to eat. The wonders of corn taken into account, it's rather disappointing to find that Members Mark whole kernel sweet corn has a lot of complaints about texture. The product has 4.7 stars overall, but reviews complain about the corn being tough to chew, rotten, and with a flavor that was not at all what it should be, especially considering the potential that corn has. Quite a few comments point out that the carton, not the shipping box but the carton holding the 12 cans, was in good shape, yet the cans inside were all dented. That implies denting happened somewhere in the production process, not through shipping. If you want to buy canned corn at Sam's Club, be careful, especially if those reviews are accurate. Keep a close eye on the recent reviews, and see if the complaints about dents taper off.
So if you guys want to clap, this is the time.
Refried beans, chunk chicken, and seasonal favorites, oh my. Which canned Trader Joe's staple that you buy is better left on the shelf? Like any grocery store, Trader Joe's is where you will come across an array of canned goods to stock up on in your pantry. While canned beans might be one of those items you casually grab without a second thought as you walk down the aisle, loyal Trader Joe's shoppers are wary about one canned good. When it comes to the store's giant baked beans and tomato sauce, the vegan experimentalist perhaps put it best.
Nope.
The promise of an affordable, shelf-stable kitchen staple quickly evaporates when reviewers reveal that you'll probably taste the can more than the beans themselves. Those on Reddit seem to be in agreement about another criticism from the vegan experimentalist. The beans are just too sweet. It is probably assumed that baked beans will come with a touch of sweetness to them, but the giant baked beans leave many confused about what exactly to do with them. It's also worth pointing out that some users on Reddit wondered whether the canned beans were more palatable if you heated them up or not. If you need to bother asking the question, then perhaps you already know the answer. If you are unfamiliar with Greek cuisine, you may be puzzled by the concept of dolmas. But those in the know may be quicker to give them a try when you come across a can at Trader Joe's. The Greek delicacy, made with leaves usually stuffed with a rice filling, can be quite tasty if done well. Unfortunately, Trader Joe's seems to miss the mark with its particular variety. While Eating at Joe's admits that it may take a while to grow accustomed to the taste of dolmas, Trader Joe's is not doing its dolmas any favors by throwing in an odd mix of ingredients, like dill and mint, into the mixture. A shopper on Reddit mentioned how the dolmas are their least favorite thing to buy at Trader Joe's, but added that there are better versions out there in the world. So it is not so much that dolmas are a total lost cause, rather it's specifically the Trader Joe's dolmas that are a lost cause. Not to be outdone by our friend the sardine, dorade is another kind of fish that shoppers can buy in a canned variety at the grocery store. If you have an affinity for sardines and are looking to branch out, you might have stopped in the canned food aisle in the past and considered picking up some dorade to see how it compares. While most of Trader Joe's canned fish varieties seem to be widely popular, such as its smoked trout, the dorade appears to come up short when one looks for any sign of approval. One comment noted that the dorade sold at Trader Joe's is unusually terrible when compared to the other choices available, like sardines, herring, and mackerel.
Oh my God.
Another Reddit thread revealed many shoppers who found the smell to be quite off-putting, only to be followed up by a so-so experience when eating them. Several noted that the flavor of the dorade was bland, and definitely not worth the labor that is required to get past the smell. Of the canned fish sold at Trader Joe's, the dorade seems to be the only kind that received multiple knocks against it, which is interesting considering that it received good marks for flavor from Fortune Fish and Gourmet. Perhaps the dorade is the kind of fish that's best eaten fresh and not straight out of a can. In the world of dairy substitutes, coconut milk has a creamier texture than many of its competitors, which many consumers will find appealing when adding to their favorite beverage or soup. The creaminess is amplified by coconut milk's added benefits, such as lower calories in 1 cup than cow's milk, according to Medical News Today. There are countless brands that are capitalizing on dairy substitute trends, including Trader Joe's, which sells cans of coconut cream in its stores. If you're a longtime customer of Trader Joe's, then you may recognize when the formula changes in your favorite items. That seems to be the case with its organic coconut cream, as shoppers on Trader Joe's reviews note that the quality is not what it used to be. Many noticed that its oily consistency is not what they were expecting from this particular product. As with many other products, a natural separation of oil is nothing to be alarmed by. But in this case, it's hard to ignore. We noted that it was nearly impossible to stir the cream as the ingredients remained separated, making all of us mourn the passing of the Trader Joe's coconut cream of old. Trader Joe's just seems to be striking out left and right with their coconut cream products these days. There are also a large variety of canned beverages you can find at the grocery chain, including some canned coffees. If you're looking to enjoy your morning cup of joe without any dairy, then its coconut cream latte may sound too good to be true. Well, according to the reviews we found, that unfortunately does seem to be the case.
It sounds like a lot of...
Hoopla!
Sounds like a...
Hoopla! Hoopla!
Yeah, sorry, there's no hoopla around this cup of joe. Just like the coconut cream mentioned before, the coconut cream latte seems to have a rather oily problem. One review on Go Dairy Free mentioned that the oily base made the drink unappetizing, while another review complained that the drink made them sick.
The sharp criticisms continue over on Reddit, with many comments noting the drink's sour taste. Some even pointed out that they could not finish the drink, and it wound up in the trash after just a couple of sips. Ouch. Some canned goods are simple, straightforward, and exactly what you would expect. Whether you're stocking up on canned vegetables, tuna, or beans, there's not a whole lot of mystery involved when picking items up from the grocery store. To keep things interesting, Trader Joe's concocted its Grecian-style eggplant with tomatoes and onions. Canned eggplant. What could go wrong? Apparently, a lot can go wrong. According to What's Good at Trader Joe's, the featured flavor of eggplant is overshadowed by the tomatoes. Perhaps this is less of a can of eggplant featuring tomatoes and more of a canned tomato situation featuring eggplant. Taste aside, the reviewers pointed out the bizarre texture they experienced was not something they would expect from eggplant, which culminates in a downright confusing food item. If you love tomatoes, then this item might be a winner in your book, but if you understandably purchase this expecting eggplant, then you probably will be let down. Trader Joe's creates a bit of a frenzy multiple times each year with its rotation of seasonal items arriving in the stores. Whether it's the butternut squash macaroni and cheese in the fall, or the chocolate-covered peppermint JoJo's for the holidays, the arrival of its seasonal offerings have grown into a cult-like event. Much like the annual return of Starbucks pumpkin spice latte. But not every seasonal item at Trader Joe's is a hit, as is the case with the sparkling pomegranate punch. Pomegranate is a signature fruity flavor during the holiday season, with an array of cocktails and bubbly beverages popping up on your Pinterest board each fall. So when cans of sparkling pomegranate juice arrived on the shelves at Trader Joe's, holiday cocktail enthusiasts were ecstatic. Unfortunately, many quickly noticed the drink had an off-putting flavor that reminded them more of ginger than pomegranate. Trader Joe's food reviews added on Instagram that the pomegranate drink was missing its most important flavor, pomegranate. And What's Good at Trader Joe's simply put it as the drink not being pomegranate-y enough. It's worth mentioning that Trader Joe's does sell more flavors of sparkling juice that customers seem to enjoy across the board. It must have simply missed the mark with this pomegranate variety. Do not use the sparkling pomegranate punch as a metric for whether you should purchase other sparkling juices from Trader Joe's. Fans seem to enjoy most other flavors. Last, but certainly not least, there is the canned turkey chili with beans. For starters, this is not the healthiest of items you can find in the store. You are far better off preparing your own turkey chili from scratch, as one can contains a whopping 800 milligrams of sodium, or 30% of the recommended daily amount according to Fujicate. Not only that, but let's address the fact that this is just a processed version of something you can probably make fresh with much better results. Even if this were a healthy version of canned chili, the off-putting smell and taste alone have sent many Trader Joe's shoppers running with a similar reaction to the giant baked beans.
Nope, that's gross.
We also must address the elephant in the room. Beans are high in non-digestible compounds like fiber and raffinose, both of which are responsible for gas production in the gut, according to Healthline. So consuming a can of turkey chili may, as one pointed Redditor suggests, serve as an effective means of colonoscopy preparation. Of all the different Trader Joe's canned items, this only may be the one that you have to be most wary of consuming, particularly if you're in the company of others.
Canned spaghetti sauce can be just as tasty as the homemade kind, unless, of course, you buy one loaded with sugar or light on the garlic it claims to have. Here's the canned sauce you should avoid on your next grocery trip. With its 4-cheese sauce, Hunt's saves you the trouble of adding extra cheese to your recipe. It's a move that works in jarred sauces quite well, so dropping it into a canned version shouldn't be such a stretch. The ingredients list even breaks down the cheese blend into its components: Romano, Parmesan, ricotta, and mozzarella made from cow's milk, salt, cultures, and enzymes. That level of detail is quite a find in a food format that sometimes tries to find workarounds that don't work. It's a strategy that gives Hunt's solid footing in a sector where the competition is pretty thin to begin with. It isn't the taste that ranks this can one of the worst. The flavor is pretty decent, with the cheese essence rising above the rich tomato base in just the right measure. But the formula includes high fructose corn syrup, regular corn syrup, and sugar, which feels like a lot of sweeteners for a savory sauce. Isn't the cheese enough to make the flavor work? There's no notable sugary essence in the taste of the sauce, which points to the likelihood of the trio doing triple duty to draw down the acidity. It sure would be nice to try it without all the extra sugar though. It's not as off-putting as, say, using ketchup as spaghetti sauce, but you're better off going with a pure sauce and adding your own cheese instead. If you're going to offer a traditional spaghetti sauce in canned form, shouldn't you actually adhere to tradition? It seems kind of important. But Hunt's traditional sauce takes heritage in a slightly less than favorable direction by including ingredients that it doesn't need. Does it still taste like spaghetti sauce? Yes. Does it adhere to the honest-to-goodness tradition of real Italian sauce as part of the performance? Not really, no. Instead, it takes a contemporary approach that gives a presumably authentic sauce a factory food sucker punch. The modern tweak comes in the form of high fructose corn syrup, that gooey stuff that shows up just about everywhere these days. Add sugar to spaghetti sauce if you must, but this corn-based extraction represents some of the worst developments in contemporary food science, and certainly doesn't belong here. Nobody's asking Hunt's to aim for a deluxe concoction like lemon garlic pasta sauce, but it isn't too much to expect that the ingredients get a more trustworthy mix-in to bring sweetness to the pot. Another tiny can with the potential for big success, Hunt's roasted garlic tomato sauce should be a mini winner in your kitchen pursuits.
If Hunt's came out with a new spaghetti sauce, would you give it a try?
If Hunt's made it, sure.
Why wouldn't pureed tomatoes mixed with red pepper and salt be a culinary victory for the cook in a hurry? It's the exact assemblage you'd gather if you were making your own sauce. And yet, it fails on the taste scale dramatically, falling so short it's likely the worst can in our collection by far. What could Hunt's have done so differently that puts this can on the most unwanted list? Well, the only mention of garlic is in the natural flavors section, meaning there's less than 2% of the ingredient in the entire can. All you really need to know is that if a sauce called roasted garlic includes less than 2% of actual garlic, roasted or otherwise, it's not a sauce worth investing in. Skipping the step of making your own ground beef for a heartier, meat-based spaghetti sauce may sound like a real time saver. But which is more important, your time or your enjoyment of your dinner? And if your enjoyment includes feeling good about what comes out of a can, like Hunt's meat sauce, you'd probably like to know that your purchase netted you sauce and meat, with not much else to compete for your adoration. Well, if that's your opinion, this pre-made sauce is a convenience you'd be wise to work around. We could start with sugar, an inclusion here that only sometimes makes an appearance in spaghetti sauce. But sugar is forgivable in light of the high fructose corn syrup it shares the label with, an extra sweetener that seems like overkill. By the time we reach the hydrolyzed soy, corn, and wheat proteins, it becomes clear that meat isn't the only thing chunking up the contents of the can. In fact, rereading the front of the label, you can find the fine print lists this creation as meat flavored, instead of simply including meat. It's unsurprising that the finished sauce tastes weird too. This can gets a hearty thumbs down. Anytime vegetables enter the canned sauce equation, things are bound to get a whole lot more flavorful, right? It seems like a safe assumption, given that you would add veggies to your own homemade sauce, were you in that position. Hunt's roasted garlic and onion sauce aims for the same bullseye by dropping in 2 tasty ingredients used to make straight-up tomato sauce into a sturdier concoction for generations.
This message couldn't be clearer. The children need more sauce on their spaghetti.
It's not for lack of trying that Hunt's punts on its sturdier version of spaghetti sauce. The roasted garlic and onion actually bring the flavor up from a simmer to a boil. But what's with the high fructose corn syrup making an unnecessary appearance here? If you want that level of sweetener in your pasta, you might as well sprinkle it with gummy bears and Sour Punch straws. Tasty-wise, there's a strange chemical essence that competes with the garlic and onions and clearly doesn't belong in spaghetti sauce.